Here we go. Welcome back to Super Sentai Review, episode 472. We're here reviewing the first 4 episodes of the the most recent release Sentai. Not the one currently on the air right now. Oh no, I've already got that up to date. So, we are here discussing Bakuage Sentai, Boonboomger. Yep, I've been teasing this for a little while. As a matter of fact, this was actually supposed to come a little while ago, but basically I had to rearrange and stuff, mostly because of Tokucher appearing in the movie for Ninjanger, and plus also I wanted to get down to Sentai basically that came out when I started reviewing Sentai. This only started just last year. Yes, believe it or not, this was actually airing last year when I was reviewing which Sentai series I think it was. Let's see. What was the Sentai series I was reviewing when this started? March of last year. Okay, the Sentai I was watching at the time, basically, when this started, was in fact Go Busters. Yep. I was watching Go Busters when this came out last year. Alright, so basically with this particular one, we start off with a wedding. Yes, a wedding. Where Maria, what's the last name here? Maria Safu is being forced to marry a Yakuza's son. A Yakuza member's son. And then all of a sudden we see, well, a guy driving a fancy sports car drive up. This is Taya Hondo. Yes, I did see him basically in Gojuger, because he did that right after the series wrapped up. Or basically he's here to steal the bride, take him to her boyfriend. And of course they chase him for a while, and then we actually have our 3 members of we have our villain team show up. Well, basically our members of the Great Space Invasion running team Hiruzen. Where we have Decorade. There is Yayata Yarakar and Ashita. Yes. Or basically they're here to get what they refer to as as gasoline, which is a negative emotion. But you're like, really? They're here to get negative emotions? Yeah, it's like standard Sentai stuff, basically, where they're after some particular type of thing from humans. It could be screams, it could be an emotion per se, but usually they use it to make themselves more powerful. Or in the case of basically, they also use sorrow and all this other stuff here. So basically, the causing a ruckus. Now, the scene itself reminds me a lot of the opening episode of Car Ranger. And anyways, okay. Anyways, the scene itself, basically, with them show up with Galra being big and they're being reckless, reminds me of basically the villains from Car Ranger. Except that here's a slight problem. You would think car-based series, we would see the return of Car Ranger, like ending the members, which you would think at this point, like, are any members, like, one sadly since passed away. Yeah, it was the yellow one. Yeah, she just passed away a little while ago. She passed away last year. In May. Yeah. Which apparently she passed at the age of 46 after 3 years with cancer. Now, could in fact any of the actors come back? Well, there's nothing that says they can't come back. I would have thought, though, they would have brought these actors back. I mean, yeah, it just baffles me, like, they couldn't bring back this team, like, for a guest star appearance. Yeah, I looked up. Apparently, this team does not appear in the show itself, despite the fact the villains are very similar to Space Buzzer Buzak. Yes. Anyways, so yeah, that's what this organization reminds me of. Kind of in a way, because being reckless. Yeah. But of course they do have female members, no human members, surprisingly. Yeah, no human version members, unlike in the case of what happened with the Reckless Gang. Yeah, and I'm looking at basically who they have of the initial team per se. None of them basically is female general per se. Well, they do have one, basically Ishja. Yeah, as for the reason why it's kind of really weird. So basically, Ishta, the female member of this trio, uses a key for ignition to transform basically Maria's wedding dress, because basically, well, Toya basically proceeded to take her to a shop to get her to change of clothes and buy whatever she wants, because it's actually in episode 4 that he actually is wealthy. Yeah, he's actually rich, and he actually got this way by apparently becoming wealthy when being really young, and he's able to afford this. What his business is not really very clear, but looks like it involves cars. Yep, cars. So, pretty much basically, that's better. So then, of course, basically, the whole thing is, wedding dresses, and we kind of get a sneak preview of a couple of characters who will become big players in the series. Yes. One character, he doesn't speak in the episode, well, actually, he speaks maybe a couple lines. Excuse, first episode also the debut of Jaka Aski and Gemba Baraki. Yes. We're also introduced to Ishiro Mita, otherwise known as Shiro. Well, basically, he's the guy who gathers intelligence. And basically takes over a delivery job to take Maria to her boyfriend. And then she's like, nope, I'm going to fight. So he goes back. He gives basically a morpher. And then they transform into Boonboomger, basically transforming to these 3 suits. And it kind of looks like, though, basically with the outfits, it's like the outfits come with no boots, but sneakers. Okay. And also the helmets, basically. For some reason, people call them, like, in episode 4, they call them tire people. Yes. They refer to them as tire people instead of Boonboomger. And of course, they battle basically the wedding dress monster, who just happens to be the very first monster they just happen to fight in this whole series. Is wedding dress grammar. Yeah, I actually saw a picture of this when this. Come on. When this thing when they showed images of this last year, this actually was the first thing they previewed. Oh, our villains. Yarakar. Yep, that's one of the series generals. Here's Ishta, the one who makes the monsters. And Decorate. Yep, that's him. And of course, they battle him and they defeat him, and then of course, ooh, let's go giant size with our mech. Oh, while they're in the base, basically, they debut basically an ally of theirs. Named Bandaro Banderas. Otherwise known as Maria calls him Bunchun. Yeah, so basically he cooks some curry. Yep. And then of course basically we summon our mech here. Well, he becomes a giant trailer, and then of course they summon the actual like mechs. Trying to show basically what the yeah, that's our mech. And they defeat the monster by unscrewing the screws and then slicing the thing up. Yep. And that eliminates basically the first monster. Oh, how do you get the other monsters? Well, for the grammar, they basically use a fan that transforms into a vacuum cleaner. Toki grammar, a clock. And sonogrammer, basically, they have to use a sauna they're working in. Excuse me. Yeah. And a lot of this is basically like, well, in the case of the first one, the second one, they have to basically, because he's rusted, when he goes Johnson, they had to use a different thing. They use like a dual tool to beat him. So the whole thing, second one is like, so she gets reluctantly accepted, but of course Blue doesn't accept her. Next episode, of course, basically like they have to do a delivery to bring the delivery girl along, and eventually they have to deal with basically the monster, of course. Yes. And of course using it as a distraction. Yes, a distraction. And, well, this is where the supply comes in. Of course, they don't exactly get named yet. The officer gets his equipment sliced up. And then, like in the... Let's see. So, she becomes kind of excited to the team in the next episode. In the third episode, basically, she has to do her own delivery. She can't use the car. Nope. Has to do it by herself because she accepts the delivery. So basically, the supplier gives her a bicycle, which she bicycles a whole lot of the episode, while the team deals with basically the monster. Eventually, she's able to deliver the mirror, which apparently, thanks to her part-time job at a bakery, delivering this mirror to this kid's grandma. Yeah. Also, we debuted this particular... We only hear his voice, but we don't see him yet. A man by the name of Medrex. Yeah, we hear his voice. And after the first time, basically, oh yeah, the boss basically will approve of this, no problem. And then of course our trio, basically a trio of villains, basically wants in charge of it, obviously. Yes, and then by the end of episode 3, basically, we have June go back to his office where he meets up with basically an agent of the International Space Agency, Sabu. Saruri Sabu. Yes, a very pretty woman. Yes. And she's only 35. Yes, believe it or not, she's 35 years old. And then pretty much basically she enlists basically the Rangers for help. Yeah, so of course June basically helps out, but he actually arrests the pink one, like, oh, we know who he is, and this kind of basically how the government gets involved with the Boonboomger, despite the fact that, well, they're actually self-financed. And of course, by the end of the 4th episode, the International Space Agency has accepted basically Kaya's conditions with the team. This is reluctant at first, they're told to disband because, well, they're outside government. Basically, I think that the reason why that she's here because they're upset because the government's not in control. Well, this is more like the UN controlling them. Which kind of in a way makes them the first team since Sun Vulcan to have basically oversight by the United Nations. The last team did this, like I mentioned, was Sun Vulcan back in 1981. Of course, this came out in 2024. 42 years later. Actually, 43 years later. So, and of course, we see the gas, and of course, not collected for some reason. And of course, oh yeah, prior to the big mech battle, they had this thing where, oh, they ride their mechs in this race, and the whole thing is trying to knock off basically Yama off the racetrack. One of them seems really silly. I think it was episode 3. It's like, oh, one bump, like that's it. Yeah, really disappointed with this race. He gets upset also in episode 4 when they start hitting him. It's like, don't hit me, that hurts. Yep. But not much is to say about the first 4 episodes of this particular series right now. But I'll talk more about this later. Right now, I've got to go outside and clean my gutters on one side of my house. And then when I get back, I'm going to just basically discuss my 3 brand new anime that released for today, okay? But, so I'll see you all later. Bye.